Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. Really excited for another Mock Draft Monday, and it's a special one here to kick off December. We are through a month of the college basketball season, nearly 2 months of international basketball play for these draft prospects, and coming up on a month and a half of the NBA. So we're at a really nice early destination point for what we're starting to see in college basketball, international prospect play, and what these NBA teams are becoming in a long 82-game season, almost a quarter of the way through that as well. Hopefully you guys do enjoy the content today. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you do. Also, hype the video. That helps out a ton. I think it pushes the video into the algorithm, so I'd really appreciate it if you take a second and do that. And let's jump into our video preview. In this mock draft today, the draft order will be set by reverse order of the NBA standings, so the worst teams at the top, as you would expect, as of November 30th. So I worked really hard to put this together on Sunday so that you guys could see it Monday morning. Early returns for the draft prospects. We'll talk about international guys. We'll talk about a lot of international guys who are playing in college basketball, like a Neoklis, Avdalas, for example. And then we'll also talk about, of course, the United States college basketball players as well. And right now, what I really want to hear from you guys, who is your favorite 2026 NBA draft prospect? Make sure to comment that down below. I'm going to be leaving those little hearts on all of those comments on today's video. A special thank you to College Basketball Analytics. The link to their website will be in the description down below. Use code UTILITY at their site for $30 off on any of their packages, whether it's the 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, or 12-month package. Very worth it. You're going to see data from their website today that keeps you up to date on all of the college basketball players across the Division I, Division II, and Division III level. I swear I spend hours and hours on their site a day digging, diving, and trying to find any little hidden nugget I can. Super great site. I definitely recommend it, and I'm very excited to share some of their site with you all as well today, which now brings us into our mock draft. By reverse order of standings, the Washington Wizards right now would have the first overall pick. We'll obviously see how a lottery goes. We'll see how the rest of the college basketball season, international play shapes out. It's going to shift a lot of different things down the final 6 or 7 months of the college basketball season. So first overall, I have the Washington Wizards at this point selecting forward Cam Boozer out of Duke. And I have been incredibly impressed with everything that Cam Boozer has done for the Duke Blue Devils early in the season, even while many were questioning his rim finishing, his touch, some were questioning his shot diet, shot making. And listen, I don't want to mitigate or completely overlook any of those concerns. I do think there is some slight validity when you're fixating on a prospect and all of the things they do super well and all of the things that they don't do quite as well as others in the class. Cam Boozer's not a perfect prospect, but he's a very, very good one. Arguably the smartest prospect we've had in an NBA draft class since 2023 with Victor Wembanyama. I think even offensively, Boozer is a bit ahead of where Wemby was, even from an intelligence standpoint about what kinds of shots are good shots, how to generate those shots. And he's just flat out arguably the best passer in this entire draft class as well. And he can do it from the forward spot, which I think is what makes him such a unique fit, not only for any NBA team, but specifically here for the Washington Wizards, because you're going to plant him into that front court next to Alex Sarr, and all of a sudden you have one of the most dynamic 4-5 combinations in the NBA, where you're going to be able to run inverted high ball screens between Sarr and Boozer, with Boozer being the screen setter, slip, dive, roll type of player. Also, you can have him ghost and flare, pop out. There's a lot of different things Boozer can do from a screen setting standpoint that would be very valuable next to Sarr. But you can also run it the other way, with Boozer, of course, being that 4-man who can handle the ball a bit, run 45 action, with Sarr setting ball screens, popping, slipping, short rolling. And the size between those two guys is going to put a lot of pressure on defenses to try and contain them. We saw how strong of a front court pairing last year in the East playoffs Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner were for Indiana. Now think about that kind of on steroids moving forward, with Cam Boozer being someone who is going to be a multi-time All-NBA first-team type of player, possibly at minimum multi-time All-NBA in general. You're looking at someone who is going to be a multi-time All-Star, maybe down the road has real chances at cracking into that MVP discussion in the future, because his impact and all the metrics point to him being this hugely impactful winner Defensively, he generates a lot of turnovers, block shots, and then he's also just flat out the best outlet passer in this year's draft class, and he's going to be probably one of, if not the best outlet passers in the entire NBA the moment he steps foot in the league. I do want to look at his scoring breakdown right now a little bit, his field goal percentage by region, because I do think, again, I don't want to overlook some of those concerns. Now, he's shooting the three ball very effectively, about 36% on above the break threes, and albeit very low volume, which is what you expect for your best players, but shooting it very well from the corner on, again, super small volume. I think the big question is this mid-range area. And when the game gets tough, guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, some of the best scorers in NBA history, Kevin Durant, LeBron James even, in that mid-post area. I think about, historically Michael Jordan. This has kind of been the sweet spot for these guys where before the help can come all the way, show extra bodies to him at the rim, can they get their mid-range game off? And right now for Boozer, that doesn't seem to be a big part of his game. Doesn't have a bump shoulder turn fade type of shot in his arsenal quite yet, but he's going to be able to get there, I think. I'm a big believer in the touch. He's shooting about 80% from the floor at the rim. He's shooting about half of his shots at the rim. He's an expert when it comes to utilizing his size and footwork to get downhill, get positioning around the rim. I know people are going to say, well, he's a little reliant playing with his back to the basket. I think given his position and his versatility playing next to other bigs, this probably won't be too much of a problem. He's put a real emphasis into stretching his game as a facilitator, a passer, and someone who also can handle the ball a bit and then shoot it. And I think that intention in his development maybe has pointed him away from doing other things when it comes to that mid-post, the post-game, back to the basket feel. All of that stuff I still think is works in progress, but Cam Boozer is so good and so polished that I think a lot of people overlook the fact that he's still learning, he's still growing, he's still developing. This guy looks like a polished product when you watch him play, but that's far from the truth, really. He's going to get a lot better. He's going to be a fantastic player. For me, throughout the last year plus or so, on the top three in this draft, I've remained highest on Cam Boozer, and I think that at this point that's where I still am. And I think Washington specifically, the fact that they have another big man already who is dynamic, mobile, and switchy like Alex Sarr, Cam Boozer would fit in like a glove, but also stand out in a good way as well. And I think Washington needs a player like this. He would be an absolute standout piece for them moving forward. At number 2, we have the Atlanta Hawks. This pick comes from the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll obviously see how the lottery plays out. I think the lottery is going to have huge ramifications this year, not only because the top of the draft is so strong, but we see this real power divide where some teams own picks of other teams. There's not protections on some of them, like that Clippers pick to OKC. There's a lot of disaster that could happen for certain franchises and a lot of blessings that could come as well to teams like Atlanta or to OKC, which would be terrifying for the league, but it's the reality of the world we live in. So second overall, here I have the Atlanta Hawks selecting guard Darryn Peterson out of Kansas. I think some of the questions around Trae Young's future, the way that they played without him this year early in the season, maybe points to some signs that, hey, there could be a changing of the guard, so to speak, and the new guard coming in is very, very good. Darryn Peterson, again, he's only played 2 games, but if you look at his numbers, he has been phenomenal. He's an incredibly impactful defender when it comes to stock generation, specifically the steals component. He's super active defensively, gambly a bit. Now at times I do think he overextends himself and kind of loses sight of his own matchup. And that comes at a detriment of team defense a little bit, but I'd rather have a prospect be overactive and over willing to try and make a play on defense than someone who's not willing at all to really work on that end of the floor. And for every mistake that Darryn Peterson makes right now, it's a growing point for him moving forward. That's the growth mindset we need to have with these guys who are 18, 19, 20 years old playing college basketball for the first times in their life. They need to be given a runway to development, and Darryn Peterson would have that here in Atlanta, playing next to Jalen Johnson. Some of the stuff DP's been doing for the Jayhawks in his first 2 college games of his career have been great. He's been flowing off the ball, working to dribble handoffs, and I do think there's a world where Darryn Peterson could be an awesome off-ball player. I think one of the biggest questions right now around Darryn Peterson is what position is he truly? I see some people labeling him as a point guard. Some people label him firmly as a shooting guard and say he's not a point guard. Here's the reality. He's going to be a lead guard. He's going to be someone who has the ball in his hands a lot. He's going to be a central focus for an offense, regardless of whether he's quote-unquote the point guard or not. And I think a team like Atlanta, who has other creators in their offense already, You look at Dyson Daniels, who's averaging a career high in assists. You look at Jalen Johnson, who's taken another step forward following off of his breakout campaign over the last couple of years. He's a tremendous player. So if there is no Trae Young in Atlanta and Darryn Peterson does become, albeit somewhat the face of the franchise, depending on how you want to rank DP and Jalen Johnson moving forward, Darryn Peterson's really, really good, and he's going to be someone who can score the ball at all three levels. I think his creativity with the ball in his hands as a ball handler, very good change of pace, burst, and then also physical coordination, plays into traffic pretty well. Contact, the contact game is great too. Like, that's one of the biggest things I watch for in guards is, are they willing to play into traffic, play into contact, can they get physical? Darryn Peterson's literally built like a man, and I think for a player as young as him to be coming into this draft cycle as built as he is, with big, broad shoulders as a guard, his willingness to take contact, finish through it, there's just been a lot of real big, glaring green lights of, hey, this guy's going to be a star in the NBA, and I'm very confident Darryn Peterson will be really, really special moving forward. Pick number 3, the Brooklyn Nets here. I think, kind of a consolation prize, so to speak. Now, that's going to sound a little blasphemous to some, but I think firmly at this point in the cycle, AJ Dybantsa is my number 3 player in the draft, and I do think he is a bit below both Boozer and Darryn Peterson for me. Now, AJ Dybantsa is really special. I do have a breakdown out on the channel talking about a lot of his offensive talent. I do look at some of the defensive film as well. I think in this mock draft, it is important for me to, again, look at the defensive numbers. And we're looking at one of the best athletes in college basketball. He's got incredible flexibility, mobility tools at 6'8", 6'9". This is a special athlete. The issue is the application isn't consistently there defensively. Now, I included this screenshot from College Basketball Analytics intentionally because we are seeing some great stuff from his athleticism, specifically looking at his usage rate. He's, of course, a central part of what Kevin Young and BYU are doing. His free throw attempt rate is awesome in the 77th percentile. His rebounding has been quite good, more so on the defensive side where he's getting 18.4% D-rebound percentage, which is very strong. Again, you're looking at the 85th percentile across all of college basketball. But then you look at these stock numbers here, right down this threshold, and it's kind of surprising to me even. Going back to his high school film, it wasn't like he was this consistently great, high-effort, super intense defender, but you kind of just thought, hey, going into college, like, he is just going to out-athlete a lot of guys, and he's going to, get in the passing lanes, he'll get some blocks here and there. Like, stuff will just stack up for him, and it really hasn't, and the screen navigation's been horrible. There's a lot of stuff that I'm kind of like raising red flags about defensively. Now, again, he's really young. I think having that growth mindset, I talked about it with Boozer, I talked about it with Darryn Peterson. That is true for all 30 of the guys we're going to talk about in this first round. And I think Dybantsa is one where I would love for the early indicators to be better for him defensively, and honestly, right now they're quite bad. His defensive work is not pretty. There's some low effort, low energy plays that you see trending on social media. There's, just the technique standpoint, I don't think is quite good. And I think, he is missing some of those early baseline fundamental technical tools to become a great defender. Now, the thing I do like is when you have someone who is this athletic and this special from a kind of coordination, balance, flexibility standpoint, when the game gets really tight, I don't think he's going to be like oh my gosh, this is a massive black hole, let's attack him every possession, because he is still long and athletic. But at the end of the day, like, from a possession-to-possession standpoint, early in the NBA season, early quarters, first, second, third quarter, what's the attention to detail look like? I do think that is a little bit of a red flag right now. Now, one thing he does very well is he doesn't foul, but it's also because he's not been super involved defensively when it comes to forcing turnovers, forcing misses at a high rate. So I still think there's a lot of work for him when it comes to the technique standpoint to maybe even close the gap between Boozer and Peterson with where he is currently. Still an awesome prospect, someone who I think is going to very likely stay in the top 3 for me all cycle long. I would be pretty surprised if he finishes outside the top 3 for me. He should be a top 3 pick, but I do think there are some holes to point to in his game. I pointed to a couple as well in the others, but I think Dybantsa's are maybe a little bit more detrimental to a team philosophy. Moving on now to pick number 4, we have the Indiana Pacers. Man, what a down year it has been for them. And what perfect timing, right? Haliburton out, you lose your center Miles Turner to free agency. The team doesn't look really anything like it did last year with all the other injuries stacking up. They've had to sign different guys to contracts just to fill out teams. It's been kind of a whirlwind of bad stuff for Indiana, but that's okay because it's a great draft for them to have a high pick. 4th overall, I have them going with forward Caleb Wilson out of North Carolina. He has been just great for UNC, specifically when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. I think there's a lot of really impactful stuff that he can be for a team defense. And I think Caleb Wilson would kind of be the realization for Indiana what they wanted Jarace Walker to be. Now, I'm not completely out on Jarace Walker, but Caleb Wilson just completely dwarfs him from an athletic standpoint. This guy is a freak athlete with some real defensive impact numbers. We talk about the steal rate, the block rate, those things that I was a little hesitant on with AJ Dybantsa just a pick ago. Caleb Wilson is racking up stocks for UNC, and he has been a force athletically, playing off of Henry Vasar, working the baseline offensively, getting a ton of dunks. Now, I do think a lot of people are overlooking Caleb Wilson's issues and shortcomings offensively right now. The three-point attempt rate is next to nothing. He doesn't self-create at all. His touch below the rim is quite bad still at this point. Those are a lot of glaring red flags, and there's a real reason for me, even with me being slightly lower in Dybantsa than others, there is still a significant divide for me between pick 3 and pick 4 in this draft. And I know that's going to sound like a hot take to people. Koa Peat's played really well. Caleb Wilson's been awesome for UNC. There is still a significant divide between pick 3 and pick 4 in this class. Caleb Wilson should not enter top 3 pick conversations. I even saw people on Twitter saying top 2 or top 1 pick. That's not going to happen. That can't happen. And if that does happen, someone's going to get fired. Okay, that cannot be what happens. I'm telling you, there's a real world of difference between Caleb Wilson and the top 3. There's a significant difference between them. Now, Caleb Wilson's got a lot of tools to grow into this fantastic, awesome player, but right now you're looking at the last 36 months, 24 months of body work that we've got. You look at the high school tape, you look at the college tape, all of the UIBL numbers, everything that you can get your hands on data-wise. Caleb Wilson should not be a top 3 pick in this draft. Now, it doesn't mean he's not really good, and I think Indiana would be a dream landing spot because you have other talented creators he could play off of. He can work off of Pascal Siakam effectively. He can work off Tyrese Haliburton offensively effectively. And he would be a real additive defensive weapon, Swiss Army knife, guard up and down the lineup a little bit, cause a little bit more havoc, get out and run. And the Pacers, we know how fast they love to play. Caleb Wilson can be additive in that regard as well. So I don't want to have this be a pessimistic portion of the video, but I just wanted to make sure I shared my take on the top 3, top 4 discussion in this draft class. Now, he's really impressed me, right? My early mocks had him around 7, 8. I have him up to 4 here. And I do think, first of all, early in the college season, you need to be very willing to change your perspective and look at new data and take everything seriously, but also not overreact. And I feel like that's where I'm at right now with Caleb Wilson. He's impressed me. He's been much better than I was even expecting him to be early in his college season, but there are still a lot of glaring holes, and that's okay. Everyone wants every prospect to be this dynamic, elite on-ball prospect. If you look at the NBA right now, that's not what every single team needs. A lot of teams need guys who fill the gaps, do a lot of the little stuff, rebound the ball, create turnovers, get out and run, finish plays as a cutter, as an extra passer to fit in. Caleb Wilson checks a lot of those boxes. Even if he's never a 1A or 1B option for a team, doesn't mean he can't live up to a top 4 pick in the draft type of hype. And I think for Indiana, maybe that's what he's going to bring for them if he lands with the Pacers. Moving on to pick number 5, the Sacramento Kings here now. Man, Sacramento Kings fans, I feel bad for you guys. Really passionate fan base, and you've just had to deal with bad ownership, and as a result of that, a lot of difficulties along the way. But 5th overall here, I have the Kings selecting forward Koa Peat out of Arizona. This is another guy who comes with some real flaws, and we're going to talk about them here, but also a lot of really great stuff. Really dynamic role man, fantastic athlete. The beginning game of the season was just brilliant for him, and he stood out in a huge way. Scored 30 points to open the season for Arizona. Now, that has been his best game up to this point in the year, but he's been productive and effective in all of the other games as well, and I wanted to highlight his rim finishing specifically, where a majority of his shots come from are in that painted area, specifically within 3 feet of the hoop, where he's shooting 70% on the season, a lot of them finishing above the rim as a roll man. And he's got some great hands, good balance, footwork, coordination, all of the things that you're looking for in bigs. He checks a lot of those boxes, and I think this fit next to Domantas Sabonis is really interesting to me, because every time I watch the Sacramento Kings, and especially to begin the year without Keegan Murray, it's just so glaringly apparent that they need better athletes. They need bigger physical wings, guys who can catch, finish, cut, duck in, post up a little bit here and there. I know people are going to say, well, post-ups are dead in the NBA. They are to an extent, but still from a possession-to-possession basis, if you are able to scrap up 2 points or 4 points by cutting, being physical, getting into the paint, and catching and finishing, those little 2 to 4 point margins do make huge impacts in winning and losing. And I think next to Sabonis, you have such a strong big man who does oftentimes require the other team's center to guard him. Koa Peat could be able to eat out of their zoom action, out of Sabonis off the top of the key. Now, I know things do look a little bit different with Doug Christie running the show compared to Mike Brown in years past, but Koa Peat, this is a very strong addition. Now, I also really thought about the Kings going with a guard. That makes a lot of sense for their future, too. This Kings team feels like a mess. They went out and got Russ. They got Dennis Schroeder. They've made so many attempts to try and solve the De'Aaron Fox trade. The issue right now, we just don't even know what this team's going to look like. There's reports, rumors saying that they want to trade LaVine, that DeRozan might be out. Who knows what's going to happen? The Kings tried to go Chicago West. It hasn't worked out for them. Who could have guessed that wouldn't have been productive? But, it's kind of just a hard situation. They had to deal with De'Aaron Fox asking for a trade, and it completely threw off the future of their team and kind of the outlook of everything. So have a little bit of sympathy for Kings fans. They didn't ask for this, but Koa Peat comes with his own red flags, doesn't shoot the ball at all, doesn't really self-create for himself either. So if you're looking from an offensive ceiling standpoint, there's a lot of at least question marks at this point in time. But the things he does well, he does very well. So there is still a lot to be excited about. I think his fit next to Sabonis would be very fascinating as well. Moving on to pick 6. This is where we start to sound the alarms. Oklahoma City here. This pick comes from the Los Angeles Clippers, who have had a horrid start to their season. And 6th overall, I have the Thunder selecting forward Nate Ament out of Tennessee. Ament's had an interesting start to the year. He hasn't been super efficient. If you look at his tracking numbers here, just not great on 2-pointers or 3-pointers in this area. Ranking in the sub-50th percentile in both of those areas. But he is getting a lot of attempts. He's been a central part of Tennessee's offense. And I think this is where numbers are really important, but so is the eye test and understanding, again, this is an 18, 19-year-old kid playing in the SEC, tough battles going forward, and the eye test is still very positive for him. The shot selection, I think, has been quite good. I think we're seeing glimpses of him being able to play into traffic and finish. The steal rate's been awesome. He's been impactful defensively. And you're kind of looking at a player in the same mold as a Zachary Reese-Sachet, Patrick Williams, Jabari Smith Jr. is another name that's going to be a mainstay comparison for Nate Ament. And I think, obviously he hasn't had that defensive impact as a shot blocker up to this point for Tennessee, but he's been very active defensively. He still presents himself with his length consistently. He gets to the line actually at a pretty good rate, and I think part of that is some of those flashes of coordination and balance and being able to play into traffic. He has some unique gathers that I think he's still building on. He's not this fully fleshed out prospect at this point that I'm saying, hey, he gets into the NBA and he's scoring 20 points a game by year 2. I don't think that's the case. I think this is probably someone who turns into a 12 to 16 point per game guy by year 3 of his career, but it's an effective 12 to 16 points, and someone who can be a huge positive impact to transition offense, a floor spacer, someone who's willing to catch and shoot. Maybe after a mismatch in early transition, you can feed him a post up. He likes to go to that shoulder turn fade. Now, is that the best form of offense? I don't really think so, but I think there's room for him to grow in a lot of different areas, and I think this is a guy who's going to get drafted high because he's got the early NBA indicators of length, size, shooting touch. And it's going to intrigue a lot of teams. I would be pretty shocked if by the end of the cycle, Nate Ament's not a top 7 pick in the draft, just given the history of the NBA draft, which teams typically look at, length and size and shooting touch. And players like Nate Ament, there's just fewer of them because he's so long and gifted on the perimeter as a shooter that it's going to at least lock him into the top 10, and like I said, would be shocked if he doesn't go in the top 7 ultimately. Moving on here now to pick number 7, the Dallas Mavericks in this spot. And they get their selection of the bunch. A ton of guards still available. I think this is a very deep and loaded guard draft in the 2026 class. And 7th overall, I have them selecting guard Mikel Brown Jr. out of Louisville. This is a player who has significant three-point volume. A ton of pull-up jump shots. In fact, 53% of his shots have come from behind the three-point line. Especially at the top of the break, where he's shot a huge volume of them. Now, he is just 14 of 44 to begin the season. He hasn't been connecting on a ton of them, but he has been super efficient inside the painted area. Not so much at the non-rim field goal attempt numbers, shooting about 45% from there, which isn't like completely horrible, but it's not great. Specifically at the rim, though, he's 13 of 17 to begin the year. Now, going forward, I want to see Mikel Brown, especially early into ACC play in the next month or so, I want to see him get to the rim even more frequently, increase that free throw rate a bit more, which has been, I think, an early indication of success for him. He has been getting to the free throw line at a pretty acceptable rate, which has helped his true shooting numbers and overall efficiency. I do want to see him continuing to get to the rim more because his handle, his shot creation, a lot of the stuff that impressed people about Walter Clayton Jr. last cycle, a lot of that's going to, I think, continue to be the selling points for Mikel Brown Jr. For a prospect with his length, size, of course, pedigree as well, playing for Team USA and FIBA U19, all that stuff. He's been an impressive player for a while. He's been on NBA teams' radar for years and years at this point. And he's a player that I think is going to be very easy to buy stock into as the cycle goes on because he's got that natural length and size. He's got the shooting touch. And when he gets hot, and I think that will happen at some point this year, where he goes on a stretch where he shoots 45 to 50% from 3 for 4 or 5 games, and you're starting to say, oh my gosh, wow. He had, an earlier game this year, 29 points against Kentucky, some really great stuff. It's very easy to buy stock into him because of the handle, the shot creation, the pull-up game, which is stuff you're going to be looking for from NBA-level guards. Can they get to their dribble pull-ups? Can they get to spots on the floor that they're comfortable? So far, Mikel Brown Jr. has done a lot of that. So for Dallas, a team so guard needy, I think he does make a lot of sense, and he can definitely help their three-point volume as well, which is in huge desperation at this point, even with Cooper Flagg in the mix. Moving on to pick number 8, the Utah Jazz here. This pick is top 8 protected, so really important for Utah. I think down the stretch of the year, with no Walker Kessler the rest of the season, it's very likely the Jazz will be able to find a way to keep this selection. Now, it would go to OKC if not, so this is another one where we might be sounding the alarms if it moves to pick number 9. But 8th overall, I have the Utah Jazz here selecting guard Kingston Flemings out of Houston. This was really hard for me because the Jazz probably don't need another guard like Kingston Flemings, but he's really good. I think if you look at what's happening for Utah, first of all, Walter Clayton Jr. I thought was a good pick for them this last draft. And also Keontae George is having a huge breakout season. He's been tremendous for them, honestly. And a big reason why this pick is hovering around that 8 to 9 spot in this draft right now is because he's having a career year. The reason I go with Kingston Flemings, this is a talent grab. He has been awesome to start the year for Houston. I think specifically his balance as a pull-up jump shooter. I wanted to include his field goal percentage by region here from College Basketball Analytics because it's all green. And it's obvious because he's just dynamic. He can get anywhere he wants on the floor. He changes pace extremely well. Great change of direction player. He can win with his changeup, which is what I like to say when I'm talking about his ability to change up pace, change up speed, change up direction. And it just becomes very difficult to guard someone who is so deep in their amount of counters, and they can get where they want. They can reject ball screens. They can take ball screens, turn the corner downhill on you. He does a lot of things really well. Now he's playing next to a bunch of talented players, which is helping him succeed at Houston. But he's been great around the rim, super quick when he gets there. Now, one little caveat that I want to point out, he doesn't get to jump stops very frequently when he's driving. Part of that is he is a slightly smaller, he's not small, he's about 6'3", 6'4", but he's not this huge jumbo guard who is going to be an awesome below-the-rim finisher if he doesn't do it quickly. And I think because of that, he has this tendency to not get to jump stops, and that's when we typically do see some of his mistakes, whether it's a bad miss or a turnover that he throws. He leaves his feet prematurely, maybe without a plan. But it's kind of puzzling to me because he also, anytime he gets to this mid-range area, he'll drive in off the slot here, and he gets to a beautiful jump stop with the defender trying to cut him off to the rim, and the defender just keeps running, and he's able to create 3-4 feet of separation and then knock down a pull-up jumper because he gets balanced, and then he rises up vertically. So it's funny to me because Flemings does some great stuff footwork-wise, and then he also on drives loses that footwork a little bit. But the shooting's been tremendous. He's been great from every area of the floor. I'm very excited about him as a player. He's a guy who, coming into the year, I wasn't exactly sure what his role and usage were going to be for Houston. And he's just been great for them. He's just been really good and a high volume, high impact contributor. One thing Houston does really well too is they blitz the ball on high ball screens super consistently. And for someone like Flemings, I think that's protected him a little bit. But he also has the activity level and the want to compete defensively. And that you need that to play for Sampson at Houston. You just flat out need that. So the fact that he has that want to compete effort and the system around him for the Cougars is so great has allowed him to be an actual additive defensive piece for them too. Now in the NBA, I think next to drop coverage centers, that'll be a little bit more of a question mark for me. But right now, there's just so much to be excited about. And I think for Utah, even though they don't need a guard, this is just flat out hey, we think this guy's really darn good at basketball. Let's get him here at 8. We'll figure out the rest moving forward. I think there's still a lot of question marks on this Jazz roster, but anytime you can get a surefire addition and a surefire talent grab, even at 8 in this draft class, you go out and you do it because the 2026 draft is absolutely loaded. Down to pick number 9, the Charlotte Hornets here. Knipple has been awesome for the Hornets. I have a breakdown out on the channel highlighting some of the things he's done really well to begin the season for the Hornets, but 9th overall here, I have Charlotte selecting another guard, Labaron Philon for Alabama. And one of the biggest things I want to talk about, this guy's very NBA ready because he's playing in an NBA type of system right now for Nate Oates, where he's in a super high-paced environment for the Crimson Tide, 98th percentile when he's on the floor in pace. And that really fits his style of play specifically with his ability to get downhill, drive and kick the basketball. And with no Mark Sears this year, it has opened up the opportunity for Labaron Philon to really truly be himself as a lead guard, as an on-ball player, and he's making the most of that. He's been super effective, productive, leading this Alabama Crimson Tide offense, and I think for Charlotte, with question marks around LaMelo Ball, his future there in Charlotte. Also, we saw the Hornets take an Alabama player a couple drafts ago in Brandon Miller. The Hornets are in a spot where next to Knipple, next to Brandon Miller, and hopefully Tidjon Salon will grow and turn into some kind of NBA contributor in the future, you have the makings of this elite transition force because Knipple is one of the best shooters in the NBA. Brandon Miller thrived and dominated in his transition opportunities for the Crimson Tide a few years ago. Now we need to get a fast, downhill, quick, turn the corner and go type of guard in Labaron Philon. It's going to open up a lot of drive and kick. They have the shooting now in Charlotte. And I think next to Kalkbrenner as well, you have a screen setter. You have stuff for your half court that will, I think, allow and elevate Philon to be a good downhill force in the half court. But specifically, you want to play fast, especially around Charles Lee, who has placed an emphasis on three-point shooting, a lot of good creativity in the Hornets offense. I think Labaron Philon can be someone who is plug and play in the guard spot here for Charlotte, whether or not LaMelo Ball is in the future picture for this Hornets team. Moving on to pick number 10, the Memphis Grizzlies, who year after year seem to win the draft. Hopefully that translates to winning a playoff series soon. But 10th overall, I have them here selecting center Jayden Quaintance out of Kentucky. Now, he has yet to make his Kentucky Wildcats debut, and as a result of that, he has slid a little bit in this mock draft. He had been consistently a top 4 or 5 pick for me in my earlier mock drafts, my way too early mock, and then my college preseason mock draft. This is the third mock draft of the cycle here. And for me with Quaintance, I think specifically for Memphis, you look at what they've done under Kleiman, the decision-making, it's been very front-court heavy when it comes to drafting, and that's worked out for them. You know, they drafted Zach Edey, they drafted Brandon Clark, drafted Jaren Jackson Jr. They've had a lot of emphasis and placed a lot of emphasis on their front-court play, and front-court play is huge, especially in the Western Conference when you're trying to deal with teams like OKC who have Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. You're dealing with Denver and Nikola Jokic, who's one of the best offensive players ever. You need guys who can block shots, be impactful defensively, and Quaintance is a value snag here for Memphis. Coming into the year, again, we thought he was going to be a very high pick, and the injury stuff has slowed that whole train down a little bit. Now, I still think he is going to warrant very likely top 10 selection because when he was a 17-year-old playing for Arizona State, he was one of the best defenders in the entire country. And I don't see that changing if he gets healthy and gets on the court. And Memphis is going to look at this and say, hey, this is a prime opportunity for us to have going forward a front court of Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey, and Jayden Quaintance. The three of them can all play off of each other to some extent. You have elite shot blocking, elite rim deterrence, and a ton of size. And I know people are going to say, well, this, that, and the other thing. What about after John Morant? If he leaves, whatever, this, that, or the other thing. At the end of the day, the NBA is about talent. And if you can load up, especially in the front court, some of the best teams in the league are deep in the front court. They have really elite big man play. And Jayden Quaintance can be a huge addendum to this Grizzlies roster as it currently sits. Pick number 11, the Portland Trailblazers here. This pick is lottery protected. The Blazers started the year off incredibly well, have cooled off a little bit. We'll see what this team actually shapes out to by the end of the year. If this pick doesn't fall in the lottery, which there's a chance this would convey to Chicago. But here at 11, I have the Blazers selecting center Chris Cenac Jr. out of Houston. This is a big question mark at this point of the year. Chris Cenac Jr. I thought was someone who's going to come in and have kind of like a really easy road to being like a surefire top 10 pick. The beginning stages of the year haven't been elite for him. Hasn't been generating a ton of stocks to the level that I thought he was going to be capable of. Now, he is still blocking shots and having an impact for Houston. And I think the defensive tape has been decent, but it's not been as glaringly awesome as I was expecting it to be. Now, he is rebounding the ball extremely well, about 13 or 14 rebounds per 40 minutes, which is, I think, solid, especially given the fact that Houston does extend him away from the rim a bit. You know, rebounding numbers are a little misleading when you're looking at it just from a volume standpoint, which is why the rebounding rate numbers are pretty useful and helpful just in general. But there is some good stuff in here. But he's also been fouling a decent amount, which has been surprising to me. And the rim numbers and the passing numbers are even worse than I was expecting them to be. I thought he was going to be more impactful at the rim. He actually hasn't been making his two-pointers nearly as consistently or effectively as I was expecting him to. Now, he does have some awesome touch. He's been shooting some post fades, a few three-pointers mixed in here and there as well. So for Portland, I know Blazers fans are going to say, hey, we just took Hansen Yang, 16th overall. This is another talent grab at this point under the idea that, hey, Chris Cenac very likely coming into the year was expected to be a top 10, maybe even top 8 pick in this draft. He might fall out of that top 10 number, especially centers. I've talked about it for years. I talked about it with Jalen Darryn. I talked about it with Mark Williams in their draft class. I talked about it with Derek Lively in his class. I talked about it with Walker Kessler. I talked about it this last cycle with Kamen Maluach and Derek Queen. Bigs get underdrafted consistently. I don't understand why. It's probably the most impactful position in all of basketball, and yet teams, they get into the top 5 and they don't think it's sexy or cool to take a center. Centers win games, especially in the regular season, and finding the right one is really important. And Portland, even though Hansen Yang's extremely talented and skilled, I think Chris Cenac would maybe bring a little bit more of a defensive backbone to your team and drop and impacting shots at the rim a little bit more consistently, a bit more mobile, and better on the defensive end of the floor than Yang. So it would at least give you a change of pace between the guys, and Cenac with his ability to stretch the floor, show off his touch and everything. Maybe you could even still play 2 bigs together, which would be dynamic next to one of either Yang or Klingon moving forward. So a lot of stuff to be definitely excited about if you're Portland. And Chris Cenac Jr. is a talent pickup here at number 11. The Milwaukee Bucks at number 12. This team completely craters without Giannis Antetokounmpo on the floor. So there's a few things we're looking for. That is guard play and arguably endurance and stamina, because whoever they get here, if they have a lottery pick, needs to be someone who can be a central point of their team moving forward and someone who can play a lot of minutes. 12th overall, I have them selecting guard Bennett Stirtz out of Iowa. This is a complete opposite of what John Horst usually does, where he drafts for upside and drafts some really great athletes who actually don't have a lot of basketball skills. Cough, cough, AJ Johnson. This is a smart pick. This is, hey, if John Horst figures out what he wants to do and actually build a team that makes sense, you go out and you take arguably the best guard prospect outside of Darryn Peterson in this entire draft class. Bennett Stirtz is unreal. This guy is an unbelievable player. Now, he's only around a 22% usage rate, but he really drives the engine for Iowa. He is everything that Iowa is as a team. They play one of the slowest paces in all of college basketball, 7th percentile in pace, in team pace with Bennett Stirtz on the floor, and he plays, again, almost all of the minutes. Here's the thing about Stirtz. He doesn't turn the ball over. He is incredibly efficient, not only from a scoring, shooting perspective, but his overall turnover economy. He shoots the ball extremely well, and he drives the ball extremely well without turning it over. He can put pressure on team defenses, force rotations, force teams to enter scramble, and then make the beginning pass. And even if it doesn't turn into an assist or even a potential assist, his teammate will get one by swinging the ball and starting a swing series. And all of a sudden the ball swings around the perimeter and you force 3 closeouts in a 4-second span, and someone gets a wide open shot or a wide open dunk because the team that is defending Iowa is in scramble. And next to other great playmakers, next to other great talent, Ben Stirtz is going to stand out as a hugely positive player. This is a guy who plays almost the entire game, has an incredible steal rate, he's incredibly conditioned, doesn't turn the ball over. He's arguably the smartest or second smartest player in this draft class, just behind Cam Boozer. This player deserves to be a top 5-ish pick in the draft. The reason I'm mocking him here at 12 is because I'm mocking and projecting what teams will actually do, and teams make mistakes all the time. This is going to be one of them. Bennett Stirtz is going to get drafted way too low in this draft, I guarantee you. Even if he gets drafted at like number 8, it's going to be too low in this draft. Honestly, my previous mocks, I've been mocking him around 14 to 17-ish. It's possible he's not a lottery pick, and that would be ridiculous to me. That would be ridiculous. Milwaukee needs someone like Bennett Stirtz who can drive the ship, function off the ball as well as a shooter. Playing for the Bucks would be easy for Bennett Stirtz because he'd be able to play off the gravity of Giannis Antetokounmpo. He wouldn't be as highly taxed. And once he gets into an NBA system, the faster his teams can play around him, the better, because he's going to see open space more than he ever has playing for Ben McCollum. This guy is going to explode in the NBA. He's going to be an awesome, awesome player. And I'm just fired up about Bennett Stirtz. It's hard not to be. He's so effective and efficient, and even playing in a slow-paced college system. That's so hard to do. It's so hard to be a great offensive player in a slow context, and that's what he is. That's what he is. And you put him into an NBA team with better spacing, better shooting, better playmaking, better size, better rim finishing, and all of a sudden everything just works and fits together. We'll see how he plays going into Big Ten play, but I think he's going to continue to be awesome, and I think he's going to warrant a lottery pick in this year's draft. Pick number 13, the Chicago Bulls here. Last year, remember, they selected Noah Asenge, who we haven't gotten to see a ton of yet in his NBA career, but I think moving forward, there's going to be opportunities for him to get on the floor. Of course, Chicago wants to play with a ton of pace and space. And we're going to add a big man who can maybe fit into that a little bit, but also give them a long-term Nikola Vucevic replacement. Now, Vucevic, contractually, there's going to be some questions about his long-term future in Chicago. But Hannes Steinbach out of Washington would be a very nice pickup for them when it comes to long-term ability to stretch the floor. Now, he's only shot 3 threes to begin the season, but I think anyone who's watched him play, there's a lot of early indicators of his shooting success and touch, and then his ability to get to the rim pretty consistently, both out of back downs and drop steps. He's got a pretty developed post game, which I think is a great early indicator for his talent and skill and footwork. I think his ability to rebound the basketball has also been a huge plus. He's been very impactful on both the offensive and defensive glass to begin the year for the Washington Huskies. And I think for Chicago, while this pick isn't going to blow anyone away, it's not going to drastically probably change the future outlook of their team. It gives you some youth insurance to Vucevic, who's been such an integral and central part of their team for the last couple of years, where his shooting from the outside, his stretch big play, his reliability as a post-up option has been actually really good for Chicago, both in transition, late transition as a delay action big, someone who can pass off the top of the key, shoot it a little bit as a trail man, but also kind of be a stabilizing force for their half-court offense. And I think Hannes Steinbach can be someone who provides that for them as well. Pick number 14, the Boston Celtics here. At this spot, Boston kind of an up-and-down season to start, some poor performances, and I think they're adjusting to life without Jason Tatum, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis. This roster looks drastically different, but Jaylen Brown's trying to do his best to carry this team still to a playoff berth. They're knocking on that door still, so we'll see what happens. But 14th overall, I have the Boston Celtics selecting forward Kareem Lopez from the New Zealand Breakers. I'm kind of still out on Kareem Lopez. I don't really know. This is a guy who, first of all, the rest of the NBL season is going to be really important for me because there's like a lot of indicators of like, oh, Kareem Lopez could be really good. Some of the playmaking juice, you see him in transition in the open floor. Some of the flashes are very promising. But then there's just stretches where I feel like he kind of disappears in some games, doesn't really make his impact felt. And listen, this is maybe a little bit of an unfair testimonial on Kareem Lopez as well, because he is playing professional basketball, unlike the rest of the guys that we've talked about who in college are playing other Division I college basketball players. Kareem Lopez is playing grown men. So maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit, but right now I think Kareem Lopez is an advantage player. And for Boston, that might be able to work because, first of all, Joe Mazzulla is an extremely creative offensive head coach, a lot of really great set play design to get guys into advantage off of Jason Tatum, off of Jaylen Brown. So Kareem Lopez being an advantage guy isn't necessarily a terrible thing. I talked about this earlier with Caleb Wilson. You need players who thrive in these types of settings to be able to maximize your star talent. And Kareem Lopez's playmaking, defensive talent, which has kind of come and gone throughout the year. There's been stretches where you're like, wow, this guy could be awesome defensively. But then there's also some, kind of fundamental technique and scheme errors where you're saying, hey, he's a young player, right? So I think right now for Boston, they've given an opportunity to Josh Minott. They've given opportunities to Jordan Walsh. We see Baylor Shireman, who I liked a few drafts ago. I think he's still a player who, whether he finds a different context or not going forward, could still be a nice wing in this league. But Kareem Lopez is someone who I think in Boston could also thrive. They want to be big. They want to be long. They want to be able to impact guys defensively. Kareem Lopez has a lot of early indicators to future success. I think it's just about trying to maximize some of those opportunities and then also just continuing to grow as a jump shooter. That's going to be one of the big swing skills for him early in his NBA career. If he can shoot it consistently, he's going to be someone who stays on the floor. If not, that'll be a big question mark for the future longevity of his career. Which now brings us to pick number 15, the Oklahoma City Thunder on the clock again. This one comes from the Philadelphia 76ers. And at 15, I have them selecting forward Dame Sarr out of Duke. This is another example of the rich getting richer. Dame Sarr might be one of the best defensive players in this entire draft class. He has been unreal defensively. He's been at the point of attack a ton for Duke. And when he isn't, you feel his impact in a lot of other ways. Playing in the lanes, getting in the gaps, closing off driving opportunities, rotating down as a help man. He's just been great, and it shows up as well in the advanced numbers. With him on the floor this year, Duke's defensive rating as a team is 74.6. That is absurd. With him off the floor, Duke's defensive rating is 95.5. This is ridiculous. Just completely ridiculous stuff from Dame Sarr. The team's defensive rebound percentage ranks quite well. Their stock numbers are great. He's 12.5, 11.6% block rate and steal rate numbers when it comes to him being on the floor as a team. So Duke's just been awesome this year. They're loaded with talent. It's not just Dame Sarr, but I do think when he's on the floor, the impact has been very obvious, and he just, there's so many small things that he does from a technique standpoint. I think his ability to pressure the ball without fouling at a crazy rate's pretty good. I'm just very impressed by him as a player. So for OKC, this team doesn't need more of that, but this is exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for long athletes who can contribute in these ways. And Dame Sarr, coming over from Italy, has been brilliant for the Blue Devils defensively. Now, offensively, that's where the question marks lie, right? He's a high three-point attempt rate guy because he's not really doing a lot else on the ball. But that's kind of what you're looking for around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, around Jalen Williams, around AJ Mitchell moving forward. You're looking for guys who will shoot corner threes, cut, finish at the rim, and defend. And that's what Dame Sarr does. So I think OKC getting Dame Sarr here at 15 is like a match made in heaven for scheme and personnel. Pick number 16, the Golden State Warriors here at this point. I have them selecting center Patrick Ngongba from Duke. As we approach the twilight of Steph Curry's career, who's still playing great, by the way, they need big men who can facilitate. This is what I thought Trayce Jackson-Davis was going to be for them. It just hasn't really materialized in the exact way I expected it to, honestly. And, I talked a lot that draft cycle about Trayce Jackson-Davis being a great fit for the Warriors. They just haven't really played into that a ton. And honestly, I'm not even exactly sure why. I think, Trayce Jackson-Davis is not like an elite NBA player or anything, but I do think he would be a very serviceable big for them. They've leaned more into the Quinton Post center minutes, which I like Quinton Post pre-draft too, so I don't want to hate on Quinton Post. I think he's a good player, can stretch the floor a bit, shoot some threes, definitely valuable. I think Patrick Ngongba is like the best of both worlds for them here because he's running a very similar style of offense for Duke where there's a lot of off-ball action, a lot of off-ball movement, cutting opportunities, split action, and he's playing off the top of the key, facilitating, screening, rolling. One thing that stands out to me here is this assist rate, where he stands out among bigs in a pretty drastic way. He's a very smart player, comes from a line of basketball players, and he just knows what he's looking at on the floor. From the top of the key, this is a guy who can facilitate. And again, in the twilight of Steph Curry's career, having another big who can flow into dribble handoffs with him, who can pass the ball over the top of the defense. If you're setting flare screens, who, you run split action, can he hit the cutter? And Ngongba checks all of those boxes from an eye test standpoint. And then also, he just knows his role offensively. Screens, rolls hard, shoots around the rim. He's been extremely productive. His 2-point percentage is through the roof, one of the highest percentile rankers in this entire draft class in that perspective. He rebounds the ball extremely well. This is like a Kevon Looney on steroids type of pick for them at 16. I think Ngongba is going to finish quite high on my board relative to others, and I love this selection for them at number 16 in this year's draft. Pick number 17, the Minnesota Timberwolves here. This is the less favorable of Utah and Minnesota, and for the Wolves, who specifically have been looking at Bennett Stirtz in a lot of my previous mock drafts. With Stirtz now off the board, I have them going with a different guard here in Neoklis Avdalas from Virginia Tech. Another skilled guard who has a pretty dynamic shot range. He's shooting from all over the floor to begin the year. Now, I would love to see that rim volume pick up. Only about 11% of his shots have come at the rim. This is kind of similar to the Yegor Demon discussion, but I think a little bit different because Avdalas, I do trust his handle a little bit more. I think his breaks are a bit better when it comes to stopping on a dime. And he's utilizing and weaponizing that mid-range game at a higher clip than we ever saw Yegor Demon do, because he's able to beat defenders, force them to try and cut him off downhill, and then stop and score. And there's a lot of early positive signs, and I think for Minnesota right now, where there's questions about the guard spot, is Rob Dillingham the future? They spent a top 10 pick on him. Should he be the future? I would love Chris Finch to give him a longer leash, because I do think there's a lot of stuff that Dillingham does that other guys in this roster just simply can't do. But that's a different story. If they do go with the guard, having a bigger guard like Avdalas could make some sense, given the fact that they still do rely on Jaden McDaniels to guard ball handlers pretty consistently. Having a bigger guard allowing you to put him on threes and twos and threes, and you want to kind of mix matchups a bit, you can do that with Avdalas because he's a jumbo playmaker. And that kind of opens up the floor a little bit. It gives Ants another guy to play off of a little bit more frequently. He can initiate your offense, run pick and roll with Rudy Gobert. Avdalas, I do think, makes a lot of sense at 17, especially if guys like Philon and specifically Stirtz are off the board at this point of the draft. Pick number 18, the Memphis Grizzlies here now. This pick comes from the Phoenix Suns. And after going with Jayden Quaintance at number 10, the Grizzlies do finally get a guard here, selecting Darius Acuff Jr. out of Arkansas. I was a little unsure coming into the year what to expect with Darius Acuff, and the biggest reason why was this free throw rate number. This was one of my big questions for him coming into the cycle, which is why I didn't include him in some of my earlier first-round mocks. Because I thought, hey, he's going to be a little shot reliant. He's going to have to shoot a super great efficiency to warrant first-round discussions. Well, here we are, about a month into the college basketball season, and he's shooting great efficiencies. He's been absolutely dynamic from three, getting to the rim a bit here and there, and then his passing has been brilliant as well for Arkansas. It's not surprising to see a John Calipari guard up in the top 20 of an NBA draft class. We've seen that time and time and time again. Arkansas has two guards who could very likely be first-round picks in this draft, in Darius Acuff Jr. and Malik Thomas. We'll have to see what ultimately happens, who does declare, who doesn't. But a lot of early fun stuff to see. Acuff's been great, and I think for Memphis, with all the questions about John Morant, his future there with Memphis, they do have other guards. They have Ty Jerome, they have Scottie Pippen Jr. This isn't necessarily like a draft and, hey, play him 36 minutes right away situation. They can draft Acuff, slowly introduce him and integrate him into their system, and they could be cooking with gas down the road because Acuff's shot making has been really impressive. Now, this is going to be a sample size thing. We need to see this extend out to 26, 36 games to warrant him being a top 15, top 20-ish pick in the draft. So it's a little predictive at this point in time to have him in the top 20, but I am very excited about the early returns that we've seen, and I wanted to include him in this mock draft. Which brings us now at number 19 to the San Antonio Spurs, who have this swap option with Atlanta. And as a result, they do have a slightly higher pick than they should. 19th overall, I have them selecting center Aday Mara from Michigan. I know everyone loves French Vanilla. Luke Cornett and Victor Wembanyama. Let's get another big man in the mix. And for me specifically here with the Spurs, I kind of went back and forth. Do we go with a guard? Do we go with a wing? Now, guard wasn't really super sensible because we saw a run on them in this mock draft between that kind of 8 to 17 range. So then it was kind of wing and center. And listen, they don't probably need another center, but if they're going to get one, someone like Aday does make a lot of sense because he's got some incredible playmaking flashes. He is a pretty creative passer. He was a guy coming out of Real Madrid a few years ago that I thought could have possibly been a top 5, top 10 pick in the 2024 draft class. Ultimately, he didn't come out, didn't get a huge opportunity for Mick Cronin at UCLA through the first couple of years of his career. But now at Michigan, he's been a little bit more central to their team identity. And his size is just utterly dominant in college basketball. And it's hard to really replace a 7'3" guy. And I think we're seeing that in the stock numbers, specifically the block component. This is going to be an impactful drop coverage big. And one of San Antonio's biggest issues early in Wemby's career is the moment he steps off the floor, they can't protect the rim at the level they typically do with him on the court. Now, I'm not saying Aday Mara is going to be Wembanyama good defensively, but he's a significant step up for them where, hey, for the 12 to 16 minutes a night that you don't have Wemby, or if he misses a couple weeks of the season here and there, you have another 7'3" type of freak who can step on the court, and teams don't want to try at the rim because he's got incredible block rate numbers. He rebounds the ball extremely well, and there's some playmaking juice. I honestly do think there's a world where you could play Wemby and Mara together, which would be very interesting. But I think specifically the rationale behind this pick is it's almost not a top 20 pick. It's not like this premium asset. So why not take a stab on somebody who can fill a need for you when your best player is off the court for stretches of either the season or in games. Moving on to pick number 20 now, the Cleveland Cavaliers here. We're going to stay on the topic of the Big Ten and specifically the Michigan Wolverines by selecting forward Yaxel Lendeberg, who is off to another brilliant start for the Michigan Wolverines. Of course, coming over from UAB last year, had a real breakout season. We honestly thought was going to be a part of the 2025 draft class. He decided to forego the draft, stay in college and get a bag in NIL. He's done that with Michigan. And one of the biggest revolutions in his game specifically and across all of college basketball is this three-point attempt rate number. Last year he shot a little bit under 2 3-pointers a game for UAB. That number has nearly tripled, almost 6 3-point attempts per game for Michigan this season. And it's been really beneficial for his overall shooting numbers, his scoring, his true shooting percentage at this point of the year is up to 75.5%. His PR is through the roof. His warp is insane. He's been really good, and he's making his threes. Almost 40% on the season from three, over 82% from the free throw line. This is a guy who, honestly, like from an all-around standpoint, he was impacting the game so much for UAB that we kind of thought, hey, this is going to be someone who warrants a top 18, top 20 pick last year, even without super high three-point volume. He's completely transformed his game offensively this year while still being extremely productive for Michigan in all of the other areas, from stocks and deflections and rebounding. He's still doing everything that we loved about him last cycle, and now he's added the three-point shot to a volume standpoint, and it's just incredible. So a lot of stuff to be excited about with Yaxel Lendeberg, and having him here go at number 20 to Cleveland feels like a steal for them in this draft. The Hornets here at number 21. This is the worst of Phoenix, Washington, Orlando, and Memphis. This one specifically coming from the Magic. And at 21, I have them selecting forward Tunde Yesufu out of Baylor. So we had him go with a guard in the top 10 earlier. One of the things about Tunde Yesufu that has stood out to me early in this season for Baylor has been his defensive impact. With him on the floor, Baylor's actually been about 20 points per 100 possessions better defensively than they are without him on the court. And not only has that stood out from film, and obviously you look at him from a stock standpoint, you understand the turnover generation and making opposing offenses uncomfortable. Well, the numbers really support that too. Nearly a 4% steal rate this year, which ranks in the 91st percentile across the nation. Decent block rate for a wing as well, almost 2% there, which ranks in the 61st percentile, which includes all of those awesome big centers that we've already talked about in this mock draft. He doesn't foul at an incredible rate either. He's super efficient when he does foul, given the fact that he also causes so much havoc and chaos regardless. And then he also rebounds the ball at a decent rate for a wing, nearly 15% defensive rebound rate to begin the year. So he's got all the physical tools. I've talked a lot at length about his athleticism and physical gifts. Now for Charlotte, I think that they've they need to continue trending away from just drafting pure athletes. There's a lot of questions for me with Tunde Yesufu. I know a lot of people are going to look at these numbers and say, okay, how is he not going in the top 20? He can't pass the ball. This is Cam Whitmore 2.0 coming into this draft cycle. Now, he's a different player than Cam Whitmore. I'm not just going to bunch them up together the entire cycle. But if you want to know what the offensive concerns are, he's going to be a little turnover prone. He's not going to pass the ball. He's not going to be ever a high assist per game guy. And if you're Charlotte, you're saying, well, we already have a lot of connective pieces. We probably could use an athletic play finisher, someone who finish in transition long term. That's why Yesufu might make some sense, especially as an addendum to their team defense. But there's also a lot of concerns, right? This is, I think Charlotte with Knipple and LaMelo, and if they're able to, around Brandon Miller, add in a guy like Labaron Philon earlier, who we talked about, then they have this option to play fast and creative and have a lot of playmaking juice and cohesion. Tunde Yesufu kind of breaks that up, but he also gives you this like dynamic power athlete who can finish off 2 feet, explode off of 1 foot and finish, and is like this power leaper who's also strong, physical, can guard up and down the lineup a bit, and get you transition opportunities. So it's kind of a twofold issue here. I think Yesufu makes a lot of sense for like the play finishing component and the defensive side of the ball for Charlotte. But offensively in the half court, like there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense with Yesufu for them. So I'm kind of back and forth on him. I tried really hard in this mock draft to find a team that I was like, oh yes, this is the home run spot. I couldn't find it. I really couldn't. I thought about San Antonio at 19. I thought about Minnesota at 17 even. There's a few teams that I do think make some sense, maybe even a little bit lower here than 21, but I thought the Hornets, at this point, you take that swing on upside and hope that you can grow him as a playmaker and passer by giving him reps, giving him opportunity, and really explicitly stating to him, we need you to do this for you to be on the court a lot. And hopefully Charlotte could be the team that could pull that out of him in the NBA. The New York Knicks here at number 22. This is one of my favorite mock selections in this draft here for you guys. 22, I have them selecting guard Isaiah Evans out of Duke. This is an absolute sniper, one of the best flamethrowers in all of college basketball. Now, he's only shooting about 35% from 3 this year, so you might look at that and say, hey, he just ranks in the 63rd percentile in shooting percentage from 3. How can you say he's one of the best? It's all about degree of difficulty, volume, and the attention that this guy garners and draws for Duke. He is an absolute nightmare for teams to deal with. He draws so much attention off the ball, and that kind of gravity for Mike Brown is something that he honestly hasn't quite had, even coaching in the NBA the last few years. He did have Kevin Huerter. The first year of Kevin Huerter in Sacramento was absolute music. It was brilliant basketball. I think Isaiah Evans is even a different level to that because the ability to shoot off balance is just absurd, and the quickness moving into shots is just unreal for Duke. Every single shot that this guy makes is off the move in some form or another, and I think if you're trying to introduce him into a Zoom style offense, one of the issues I think with Zoom specifically is there's so much gravity around the ball. Zoom is so much about, okay, who's coming to the basketball, who's cutting off the basketball, and really the basketball is central to it. So when you get into the two-man actions, you're worried about, okay, how can this guy get the ball? And someone like Isaiah Evans kind of draws that attention away from the basketball a little bit more so, hey, I've got to be on this guy. If they're setting a flare screen for him away from the ball, I've got to be there. And I think that opens up the court a ton, and I think it would really just add a new layer of respect for New York. Obviously, Landry Shamet has been an impact player for them as a movement shooter, but I think, again, Isaiah Evans, you're leveling that up to the nth degree, getting a guy like Evans, and at 22, yes, he is a specialist. He's not going to be the super impactful player in a lot of other areas, but he's so impactful in the one thing that he does at an elite level that you can definitely warrant a late first-round pick selecting him. Pick number 23, we're back to Oklahoma City here with their third first-round pick. This one is the second most favorable of OKC, Houston, and the Clippers picks. And I have them here selecting guard Dash Daniels out of Melbourne United. Another NBL player here. We talked earlier about Kareem Lopez. Dash Daniels is the downgraded version of his brother, to put it plainly. Now, I don't think he's got the ball comfortability that Dyson Daniels has. We've seen, Dyson going back to his G League Ignite days was very much an on-ball player for G League Ignite. We've seen some of those tools translate when Trae Young was out for Atlanta, being a lead playmaker, averaging over 5 assists per game this year. and doing some really nice stuff. Dash Daniels isn't quite that comfortable with the ball in his hands. He's more of a true off-ball player. But again, we talked about it with Dame Sarr. What does OKC care the most about? It's about the defensive end of the floor. They have an unreal defensive rating as a team this year. They're like literally 8 points per 100 possessions better than everybody else in the NBA defensively as a team. If they can add guys like Dame Sarr and Dash Daniels this late in the draft, which, by the way, they won't be able to do this because they're going to have to trade 1 or 2 or 3 of these picks, depending on what they want to do with their roster. But if they're able to add guys like Nate Ament, who, again, another high steal rate guy, Dame Sarr, who is just incredibly long and fluid and a great defender, and then Dash Daniels, who he's picking up 94 feet in the NBL. He's guarding professional basketball players as we speak here. Like, this guy is another player who can be an impactful team defender for them. If they get opportunities to get those types of players, that's who they want. And it's continuing to work for them because they have the offensive talent around those players like Shea, like J-Dub, like Chet, like AJ Mitchell, who was a huge second-round home run for them. You guys know I loved AJ Mitchell in his draft. Dash Daniels, again, this is another addendum to their defense. And it's really hard to argue against that style when it's working so well for OKC year after year after year because they have the talent, they have a ton of offensive skill, and they have this vast, unreal collection of defensive players as well. Pick number 24, the Miami Heat. Here at this spot, I went back and forth a lot on this selection. Of course, Miami, the real talking point for them this year has been that new pace, that new offense. And I don't really understand why. From an offensive rating standpoint, they rank about dead middle in the NBA, 15th in team offensive rating. The big storyline should be their team defense, where they rank second in the NBA. They have been an unreal defense. Now, part of that might be the pace. You can argue, okay, well, pace is wearing out other teams. I think the biggest thing is they can play fast offensively, and then they can force the other team to play slow by picking up full court. Davion Mitchell's been really awesome in pickup point and forcing, opponents into difficult shots. There's a lot that goes into team defense other than just pace. I think pace is kind of the cop-out answer for a lot of people when you talk about the impact it's had. I think Miami, it is great to play fast and force the other team to play less fast than you. That's what you want to do. And I think trying to factor that in here at 24, I have them going with guard Braden Burries here. And one of the biggest differences with him on and off the floor this season has been pace. And this is one of the areas where it's going to take him a little bit to improve and grow. This is why you draft a guard and you give them time to develop without asking them to be a super high contributor. Arizona's actually played a little slower with him than without him. They ranked 57th percentile with him on the floor, and then they get even faster without him. So I think there's going to be a little bit of learning here for Miami, but even with him not playing super fast, they still had a good offense, 91st percentile offense with him on the floor, and in fact, Arizona gets worse offensively without him. So I think if you can bring him up to speed both figuratively and literally here with Miami, around Kasparas Jakuponis long-term, around Tyler Hero, around Davion Mitchell, the Heat adding more guards, giving you fresh legs. Obviously, Pele Larson as well has been a huge piece for them. The more depth you can have in the backcourt, the better. Braden Burries is a real talent grab, someone who can shoot the basketball, drive and kick it a bit. And I think in Miami's simplified offense could find a lot of success because he is a guard with downhill creation tools. Now, at times, I do think he's going to be another player who wants ball screens. That'll be kind of an interesting dilemma for Miami. I mean, honestly, my biggest concern about Kasparas Jakuponis was he's very ball screen reliant. And then Miami drafted him and then completely transformed their offense to almost no ball screens. So we'll see how that ages. But Braden Burries might find himself in that similar situation if Miami does draft him at number 24. Pick number 25, the Atlanta Hawks here now. Remember, they have that swap option that they owe San Antonio from the DeJounte Murray trade. And 25th, I have them here selecting guard Matt Abel from NC State. To be honest with you, I need to dive even deeper into the film here. I've watched a little bit of Matt Abel film from NC State this year, but not all of it. So I do need to get a little bit deeper into the film, but all of the numbers have been really incredibly impressive for him to begin the year. He's shooting threes at an incredible rate, very good three-point attempt rate and three-point success rate. And he's doing a little bit of everything. His playmaking's been acceptable. And again, with Atlanta already having selected Darryn Peterson earlier in this draft, we're looking for another guard who can maybe toggle between some on-ball, off-ball stuff, some self-creation skills, but off-the-ball movement, shooting skills as well. And then defensively, I think one of the most impressive things for me from a number standpoint, he's generating stocks as a guard. A decent number of steals, a decent number of blocks to begin the year for him. for NC State, and he's rebounding the ball a bit too. So this is someone who I think for me going forward is going to be probably a mainstay in the first round, and if not a first round pick, a very high second round pick if he does declare this year. I've been very impressed with the early returns from his film and tape, and then the numbers are backing a lot of that up. So I think for Atlanta, again, if there's no Trae Young moving forward, if there's a lot of question marks about this future guard position, getting Darryn Peterson and Matt Abel in one draft, I think really sets the future toward a bright destination for the Atlanta Hawks, even if Trae Young is not a member of this team. Pick number 26, the Toronto Raptors. Man, has this team been able to pull out close games. They beat Brooklyn a couple times in close settings, beat Charlotte one time in a close setting. They did lose in overtime the other night to Charlotte as well. But then also, they've just been able to close out close games against some bad teams. They've also had some big wins against good teams. They've been in the middle of somewhat of a winning streak. Now, of course, again, they lost to Charlotte, so that snapped that winning stretch. But this team's been better than I was expecting them to, and a big reason why is they've closed out some of those closer games. 2 or 3 of those don't go your way. Instead of being second or third in the East, you're down to 7th or down to 8th, kind of where I expected them to be. So it's definitely a drastic overturn that those few games could have. But at 26, I have them going with wing Juke Harris out of Wake Forest. I wanted to include his year-to-year split numbers and showcase the type of improvement he's had this season. Last year started just 1 game as a freshman for the Demon Deacons. This year he has started all 8 games for them at the time I'm recording this. And he's essentially doubled his effectiveness. His points per 40 minutes are through the roof, averaged about 13 points per 40 minutes last year. He's up to almost 27 points per 40 minutes, 98th percentile in the entire country. Again, he's doing that for the Demon Deacons in the ACC. 67% on twos essentially, 37% on threes. Just year over year, he has drastically improved as a player, and I think first of all, I wanted to show him some hype in this video by including him in the first round. Now, we do need to see the sample size continue and carry over, but from an athleticism standpoint and from a length, wingspan, size standpoint, he does look like an NBA wing because he's got big, broad shoulders, he's 6'7", he's got long arms. This is a guy who can hang athletically in the NBA, so I'm very excited to see how this continues to play out. I think Toronto's done a very nice job in the draft in recent years. I really like the Grady Dick selection when they made that pick. He's been awesome for them. This year, Sandro Mamukelashvili's been a really nice addition for their bench. I love Colin Murray-Boyles. I think Toronto has a really good collection of depth. Jamal Shebb was another guy I really loved in his draft. I had a first-round grade on him. He went in the second round. I've just loved a lot of what Toronto's done on the margins. Now, some of their bigger decisions, like the Emmanuel Quickley stuff, the trade for Brandon Ingram, some of those have been question marks for me because I think it kind of limits and caps the ceiling of this team in the playoffs. But again, Juke Harris at 26 could be another one of those examples of, hey, we win on the margins, we win with our depth, we win with our bench, and it's honestly been the case here. Toronto's bench has been outperforming almost everybody this year, so it's hard to argue against Toronto finding real talent down the board like they've had over the last few years. Pick 27, the Denver Nuggets here now at this spot. I have them selecting forward Alex Karaban from UConn. I saw a funny video or a funny comment on my last mock draft video saying, oh boy, another year of Sheldon hyping up Alex Karaban. We're on year number 3 here, guys. After Alex Karaban's sophomore season, I have been all in on him as a draft prospect. And I think at 27, this is a dream fit for Denver specifically because Karaban's one of those guys who can have a stock impact. He blocks shots at an elite level for a forward, has so pretty much his entire college career. And the last time he played with a great playmaking big man at the college level with Donovan Clingan, he was unreal. All of his efficiency was through the roof. So imagine what he would do next to Nikola Jokic. He would be super efficient as a role player. And I think if you look at his shot diet, this is a role player shot diet. Very efficient as a shooter, 13 of 28 above the break. Almost zero mid-range volume. He has 1 mid-range attempt this entire year. Now his paint non-rim field goal attempt numbers are not great, just 3 of 12 to begin the year. But as a cutter, as an actual finisher at the rim, he's making almost 64% of his total attempts, which is slightly above the nation average, and that includes bigs. So Karaban's been super efficient and effective as a role player for a while when he had better talent around him for UConn. We saw that, I think, this year again with a better overall team context, which is what I told you guys all last year. He's going to look better, and that's what's been the case here for UConn. Last year was a down year for Dan Hurley and the Huskies. This year, their team looks better again. They've been able to implement and introduce the right talent into the fold, and Alex Karaban's play immediately shoots up again. That's not shocking to me, so imagine what he could do with number 15 over there in Denver. Pick number 28, the Los Angeles Lakers here now. Man, the Lakers have been great. I was not anticipating this kind of season from them. I kind of thought, hey, DeAndre Ayton, I'm not sure what you're going to get. There's still a lot of question marks for me. They've been awesome, and I shouldn't have doubted Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is my favorite player in the NBA, so I don't want it to be a bad thing, but I've been very impressed with them this year. And I wanted to go with a big man here in Henry Vassar out of UNC for them at 28. Vassar has been unbelievable. I talked about him earlier when I was talking about Caleb Wilson. I think Vassar is the real deal. This guy can shoot the ball from deep. He's got excellent playmaking feel. Scores from pretty much everywhere on the floor. Now, I think the touch range, the floater range is one of the bigger question marks. But I think with a guy like Luka Doncic, the one thing you don't necessarily want or need is someone shooting a bunch of floaters or touch shots as a big man. You want rim volume because Luka is going to do a great job buying time, putting defenders in jail, giving your big time to roll, get to the backside of the rim, and exert that rim gravity. Vassar is shooting about 88% at the rim this year for UNC. Now, it's early in the season. We'll see how all those numbers hold up through conference play and everything. But he's been awesome. This is a guy with high feel, high playmaking juice as a big man. And, everyone loves 3 and D. I think DNA is a huge thing. Defense and assists. And Vassar, very smart positionally. He's massive, about 7'1". I think you see his impact defensively and shutting guys off at the rim a bit here and there. Some awesome blocks, some huge moments defensively. Even going back to his time at Arizona last year, some really great mobility tools for a big his size. And I think if you're looking at a big who could make sense next to Luka Doncic in LA, Henry Vassar makes a ton of sense for Los Angeles at number 28. Which now brings us to the Detroit Pistons. What a great beginning to the season it has been for them. I have a Jalen Darryn breakout video out on the channel as well. I love Darryn in his draft. I had him ranked number 5 on my final big board that year. And he has been paying that off big time for me. So shout out to Jalen Darryn. 29th overall here, I have the Detroit Pistons selecting guard Caden Boozer out of Duke. Now, it hasn't been a huge wow season from him early in the year, but I do think his play has been highly adequate. He's going to be a first-round caliber-ish type of player because he's going to limit turnovers. He's going to be relatively effective on the ball and off the ball as a shooter. Pretty good three-point attempt rate. About 40% of his total shots are threes, and he makes a lot of them. 38.5% early to start the season here for Duke. His numbers are all positive in terms of win shares. True shooting numbers great, and his usage rate, while it's albeit somewhat low, he initiates offense, he sets up action, he can advance the ball past the timeline against pressure. And for Detroit right now, I think one thing that they can continue using next to Cade Cunningham is just more playmaking, more ball handling. We saw the effect of Dennis Jenkins to start the year. Last year we saw how important Dennis Schroeder was. When Jaden Ivey's back full-time and healthy and everything, we'll know how important he is. It's not like Caden Boozer is like this absolute must-have for Detroit, but the more guards, the merrier. That's really the truth in the NBA. I talked about it with bigs. I talked about it with guards. To be honest, it's true with every position, but especially bigs and guards. For bigs, it helps with foul trouble a ton and just minutes distribution. Size always wins. And then with guards, it's all about ball security, handling the basketball, limiting turnovers, and initiating offense. And getting another guy who can help Cade Cunningham take a little bit of pressure off of him. It also opens up other options where if you have Caden Boozer on the floor, maybe you can get Cade more mid-post touches. Maybe you can get him the ball here, there, or somewhere else. We've seen that with Shea, right? When we want to get Shea a mid-post touch, we can have Jalen Williams initiate for OKC. And that could be somewhat the case here for Detroit too. Maybe they can find ways to creatively move Cade around a little bit more frequently with more ball handlers in the mix. Number 30, the final pick here of this first round. This is the worst of OKC, Houston, and LA. And I'm telling you right now, the Wizards are going to have the 30th pick because the Thunder might set the wins record this season. They are the best team in the league by a mile. They are insane. So Washington, get used to having pick number 30. They started this mock draft. They're going to end it as well. And I have them selecting wing Cameron Carr out of Baylor. What a breakout season it's been. I wanted to end this mock draft on a little bit of a bang. This is a guy who I started thinking about around pick 18. Now, we'll see how the whole season plays out once we get deep into Big 12 play and everything. But, man, has this guy been a lot of fun. Really solid three-point attempt rate. He's making a ton of his threes to start the year with really impressive range. off of movement and off of a standstill, off the dribble a bit here and there too. True shooting percentage is through the roof right now. He's a fantastic athlete. We see that number really vindicated in the block rate. We see his athleticism. Now, I do have questions about his playmaking juice and everything. This is kind of like the Isaiah Evans conversation right now. I don't think Cam Carr is quite the movement shooter, which is going to sound a little questionable because Cam Carr is shooting a better percentage than Isaiah Evans at this point of the year. But I do think, there's just levels to the movement shooting, right? Isaiah Evans, everyone's circling him as a movement shooter coming into the year. Whereas Cam Carr, I think there were less expectations on him. So we'll see how defenses adjust to him throughout the year. But as a huge hit out of the transfer portal this year for the Baylor Bears. Thank you all so much for watching. Really hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content. Don't forget to hype that video, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.